Hi, I'm Bill Longyard, and I'd like to tell you about a great way to see Europe, by kayak. Kayaking allows you to see Europe in ways that no ordinary tourist can. Since Europe's great cities were all built along riversides, what better way to go back in time than from the cockpit of a kayak? Kayaking in Europe began in the 1860s. While America was still fighting a civil war, a British lawyer and philanthropist named John MacGregor had built in London an all-wooden kayak based on Eskimo designs he had seen while living in Canada. He named his kayak Rob Roy after his famous Scottish ancestor and proceeded to take it and subsequent models all over Europe on a series of remarkable solo voyages. When he wasn't paddling down an unspoiled river or crossing a still, pristine lake, he would travel by Europe's then newly born railway system. MacGregor recorded his adventures in a series of books that gave birth to canoeing and kayaking as leisure sports, sports that today you can still enjoy very much the way as in MacGregor's time. So grab your paddle and your passport, and let's go kayaking in Europe. The best way to kayak around Europe is with a folding kayak. Though plastic kayaks are available to rent all over the continent, there is nothing more handy than having your own portable boat that you can take with you wherever you decide to go, even on the spur of the moment. Here is a list of manufacturers who sell folding kayaks in North America. I use either my single-seat Folbot Alliot or my two-seat Folbot Greenland 2. Folbot has an outstanding reputation for building quality products that they stand behind for a lifetime. I like the fact that Folbots are not only reasonably priced, but are probably the fastest to assemble boats in the industry. Many people have asked me, don't you have to pay a lot to ship a boat overseas? The answer is no. I've never paid anything to send any of my boats to Europe. Boats simply go on as normal baggage. On the few occasions when ticket agents have asked me what was in my bags, I've simply and honestly said, sports equipment. When planning a kayaking trip to Europe, remember to pack light. Learn how to do with less. My bagged Alliot weighs just under 45 pounds, while my backpack, including all my clothes, toiletries, camera gear, paperwork, one day's food and water, and even a small tent, weighs less than 20 pounds. Whatever you bring, you have to carry, so keep it light. Let's look at some of my tricks for packing for summer travel. First, bring just the minimum of clothing. In addition to what you're wearing, bring just one extra pair of pants and underwear, 2 pair of socks, and 2 shirts. Wash as you go along. You can either wash in your hotel or at a local laundry. For protection against the elements, bring a windbreaker, a baseball hat, sunglasses, and sunscreen. A baseball hat is the best because it stows away small. The biggest unnecessary waste of space when packing is to take a bath towel. Towels eat up a lot of space, take a long time to dry, and cannot be packed when damp. Instead of a bulky bath towel, try one of these instead. This is a synthetic chamois cloth available at any automotive store or even Kmart or Walmart. Synthetic chamois act like a huge sponge and simply suck up more water than you can believe. In fact, one cloth is enough to completely dry you off after a shower. Throw it over the back of a chair at night and it'll be dry in the morning. It packs smaller than a paperback book. Speaking of books, books and maps are also space gobblers. I've saved space in my bags by tearing out of guidebooks only the pages I really need. I then drill holes through the pages and bind them up with heavy thread followed by a protective cover of duct tape. It is too easy to take too many guidebooks and maps. You don't need them. Another good tip for packing lightly and efficiently is compartmentalizing. Look at what I've done. One bag for toiletries, one for camera and film, one for repair tools and hardware, and one for maps and other paperwork. This system allows you to quickly find things when you're in a hurry in near dark conditions. The secret to happy traveling is to keep frustrations to a minimum, and this system really does that. Don't forget about preserving your most important documents. You don't want your passport, Eurail pass, money, or credit cards to get lost, stolen, or wet. Therefore, keep those items in a neck pouch. I take the added precaution of using a plastic liner in my neck pouch to help keep everything dry. Remember to pack your boat carefully too. Though folding kayaks are tough, airline baggage handlers can be pretty rough. It's a good idea to place old newspapers in and around your boat to act as padding. Also, use small locks to preclude curious baggage handlers from opening your bags. On your arrival in Europe, either pick up your bags from the luggage carousel or from the oversized luggage area. Fortunately, most European airports do not charge you to use their handy luggage carts. There are several ways of enjoying a kayaking vacation in Europe. One way is to simply go to a place you want to visit and stay there the entire trip. You can establish a base at a hotel on a lake, or a seaside town, for instance. Prime candidates for this single-site trip are Lake Geneva between Switzerland and France, Lake Constance on the borders of Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, Lake Balaton, which is a relatively unknown gem of a lake in Hungary, or the great Italian lakes of Como, Garda, and Maggiore. These are my favorites. Also is the North Sea coast from Holland to Germany, or the sunny Mediterranean from Spain to Italy. Such single-base paddling vacations are inexpensive, relaxing, and they give you time to really get to know an area and meet its people. If you are on a tight budget, this is probably your best way to go. A slightly more complex kayaking vacation is a point-to-point trip where you stay on a single body of water, yet travel along it to different stops. Doing a point-to-point, you can either camp along the way or stay at a new hotel each night. If you only have a few days, try an Oxford to London paddle along the stately Thames River. This classic stretch of water has transported everyone from Queen Elizabeth to Lewis Carroll to Jerome K. Jerome, the famous Victorian author who wrote Three Men in a Boat, not to mention the dog. An even more romantic paddle in Britain is along Loch Ness in Scotland, from Inverness to Fort Augustus. I can't promise you'll meet Nessie, the legendary serpent, but the Highland vistas are still worth it. Back on the continent, fine sea kayaking opportunities are available mostly in the Mediterranean, but not exclusively. You can safely kayak along much of the French coast, though kayaking in the English Channel proper is illegal. The best place to sea kayak in northern France, and only a few hours away from Paris by train, is the Cotentin Peninsula. This area, including Normandy and Brittany, is of course famous as the landing site for the D-Day invasion. Today, its beaches, castles, and pretty seaside towns invite less hostile mariners. Holland's coast offers you the chance to island hop by day and camp at night. You may want to begin a trip from Den Helden and paddle along the Frisian island chain right up to the coast of Germany and Denmark. This is a beach party area in the summer, and sun worshippers rule here. Another sea kayaking destination is the northern coast of Scotland. It rewards those who like to be left alone, with beautifully rugged coastlines punctuated with fjords and craggy cliffs. Puffins and seals outnumber the locals. You can get up to this area by train from Glasgow. The third, and my favorite, way to kayak around Europe is to do what I call a splash and go. In a splash and go trip, you paddle on a lake or a river one day, and then catch a train, and move on to your next destination the next day. With a well-planned splash and go vacation, you can see many of Europe's best sights during just one trip. Yes, it takes a lot of energy to do a trip like this, but there's something about the planning and execution of it all that has always appealed to me. Those splash and go trips cost more than single site or point-to-point trips. They really pay off. Because you see so much, never get bored with the same scenery, and get to experience paddling on a great variety of bodies of water. Splash and Goes cost more because you need to buy a Eurail pass. Yes, it is possible to rent cars and even vans in Europe, but I don't recommend this. The problem with rental cars are cost of renting, especially in France, cost of petrol, nearly $5 a gallon, the incredible difficulty of parking in most cities, and the sheer hassle of being responsible for a car, especially if you plan to paddle from point to point. Happily, a Eurail pass allows you the freedom to get on and off trains in 17 countries whenever and wherever you want. You can simply throw your bags onto a train, find a seat, and snooze after a hard paddle. There are some exceptions to train choice, and on some high-speed trains you may have to pay a fare supplement. Yet, a Eurail pass is still a great deal. Here are some sample prices. European train stations are small cities unto themselves and offer many conveniences, including information, food, toilets, first aid, and police help. All stations use international symbols to make it easier for non-native language speakers. Each station has two prominent signs: arrivals, and more importantly for you, departures. All train schedules are listed in military time. 800 hours means 8 o'clock in the morning. 2000 hours means 8 o'clock in the evening. It can be confusing. Be careful when in train stations because they are a haven for criminals, especially in the evening. As far as money goes, I never exchange money in America anymore, or even at Bureau d'échanges in Europe. When I get to Europe, all of my cash needs can be met by finding an ATM. They're everywhere, including Eastern Europe. Let's look at some of the possible trips you can make with a Eurail pass. With a 15-day pass, you could do this. Or with a 1-month pass and enough energy, you could do it all. Whatever type of trip you make to Europe, single site, point to point, or splash and go, you'll want to navigate your way through cities and villages with your bags easily. The best way to move your bags around is with one of these, an ordinary luggage cart. I've experimented with many carts over the years, including ones I've built myself, but I've found that the best cart is built by PFC of New York. The PFC carts are available at Kmart and other retailers. A good cart needs to have a minimum of 4-inch wheels, a strong frame that can support 50 pounds even when bouncing downstairs, ability to collapse and stow inside your boat, and 2 easy-to-use yet strong bungee cords with plastic hooks to lock your bag to the cart. When I take my single-seat Aleut on a trip, I only use one cart. When my wife and I take our double Greenland 2, we each take a cart. The cart that carries the short bag we've modified with little wings on it. These help keep the large bags stable. European public transportation is outstanding. Even on buses, there's often room to bring a bicycle, and wherever you can take a bicycle, you can take a folding boat on a cart. Even boats allow you to take bicycles or carts on them. I rarely use taxis in Europe, as most train stations are close to the water, and in Europe, hotels are logically located near train stations. The few times I have used taxis, I've made sure of the following. The driver uses the meter. I establish the price of its surcharge for carrying extra luggage. In London, for instance, there is no surcharge because your bags fit inside the taxi. On the continent, there is often a surcharge because bags must be stowed in the trunk. It is often as much as $2 per bag. I try to state my destination in the local language, if I can. Even though any driver will know I'm not a native because of my accent, they are less inclined to drive me around the long way if they think I'm at least familiar with their city. Subways are the best way to get around a city. Try always to use the handicap facilities if they are available. Elevators, ramps, and moving walkways will make moving your carts around very easy. Some systems use extra wide side gates instead of turnstiles to allow people with baby carriages and oversized luggage through. The most user-friendly subway systems are in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands. By far the least user-friendly system is in Paris. It has virtually no amenities for the handicapped, and Parisian metro stops sometimes have a large amount of steps to negotiate, and this can be very daunting with your kayak bags and other luggage. Just one more point before we leave train and subway stations behind. Take advantage of their storage rooms and lockers whenever possible. If you arrive at a city but don't intend to paddle there or for some other reason don't want to haul your bags around that day, you can store them safely in a locker or guarded storage room for just a few dollars per bag. In Austria, you can store an Elliott in one ski locker and one suitcase locker. Be warned, though, you cannot always count on locker availability at stations because sometimes, though rarely, these facilities are closed due to threats of terrorism. One issue that concerns many potential kayak tourists is where to launch their boats. Isn't it hard to find launch sites in crowded European cities? Actually, the opposite is true. You can assemble your boat and launch it almost anywhere. Look at some of these places that I've launched from. Many North Americans tend to think that Europe is a bastion of rules, petty bureaucrats, and laws that severely impinge public freedom. That just simply isn't the case as far as access to water and open spaces is concerned. There are numerous public laws that go back hundreds of years which establish the right to walk, boat, and even camp on undeveloped land and water, even if it is held as private property. What all this means to you, the kayaker, is that if you see a patch of land near water, go ahead and assemble your boat. Most likely you won't be stopped as long as you don't block pedestrian or automobile traffic. Sometimes you have to be creative. Kayak clubs are another resource you may want to take advantage of. These clubs rent kayaks, canoes, they offer lessons, they offer accommodations, and they offer friendship. The most famous of these is the FFCK in France. It has stations on nearly every body of water. Just while we're on the subject of France, be careful. You cannot kayak the Seine in central Paris from the confluence of the Marne to the bend at Billancourt. Your best bet is to begin at Pont-Saint-Cloud and paddle downriver. Paddling the waters of Europe is an exciting feast for the eye and the mind. There are so many beautiful sights, all with remarkable histories and stories to tell. Be careful, though, not to let the splendor of it all cloud your judgment as a kayaker. Of course, you'll always wear a PFD. In addition, you may want to carry a whistle or safety smoke. During several of my trips, I've encountered local police forces who have questioned my kayaking on their turf. Here are some pointers for dealing with them. Smile and be polite. Remember that kayakers are often seen as a fringe element by authorities. A smile may break the ice. Comply with local laws. Always have on a PFD and look like you're safety conscious. Be mindful of the local right-of-way rules and obey them. Stay out of the way of normal shipping traffic. Move when asked. If the police or some other authority ask you to move from the river or move to a different part of a river or lake, do so. Their most important concern is that shipping goes through. You're not going to win an argument with any policeman, so don't antagonize them. Happily, Europe isn't plagued with wild-eyed adolescents zooming around on jet skis like we have back home, but that doesn't mean you can fall asleep on the water. Instead of bass boats, some bodies of water here are infested with high-powered motorboats with drunken drivers living la dolce vita a little too much. More common than even fast motorboats are huge passenger ferries whose captains can become bored and distracted while plying their milk-run routes and may not see a low-profile kayaker in their course. The most dangerous killers on all European waters are hydrofoils. From the Baltic to the Balkans and many other places in between, these speedy rockets cannot see kayakers and couldn't move out of their way if they did. It's your responsibility to stay out of their way. Look out, too, for jellyfish. Jellyfish in the Mediterranean are a big problem, and if you're stung, you'll feel it for a week. Be mindful of submerged rocks and logs in the river. As improbable as it seems, one final hazard on European lakes is the float plane. I was almost run over by a float plane on Lake Como when it took off, not from inside its clearly marked runway, but outside it. If you see a plane either on the water or up above, make sure you track it so you don't get clobbered. The European system of buoyage is exactly opposite of the North American system. If you're used to red, right, returning, make a mental note to reverse it. It's green, right, returning. You may be wondering why this is an important issue for kayakers, but some European waterways are so shallow that even kayaks, which draft only a few inches of water, need to share marked channels with ocean-going freighters. The Danube and Rhine are notoriously shallow in places. Be mindful, too, of the light signals when going under a bridge. You should go to the yellow marker in the center if you're unsure about the water depth. Be careful that you don't run into sculling crews with their backs to you, or underwater divers or swimmers. Sea kayakers need to practice their normal precautions, but also be aware that fog can roll in very quickly, even in the summer. Don't assume that just because the morning started out sunny, that it will stay that way. In Europe, the weather changes by the hour. Tides are tricky in some places, with tidal ranges sometimes in the dozens of feet. Look at how high this dock is designed to float when the tide comes in. It would be easy to be swept out to sea if you didn't ask the locals when the tide shifts. Don't forget to take precautions against hypothermia, especially in the North Sea. Knowing how to use locks will save you a lot of time. Instead of portaging, go right through locks. It's easy to do. A green light means enter. A red means stand back. Kayakers should stick to the side of a lock and not go between other boats. It's handy to use built-in ladders as a handhold as your kayak is lowered or floats higher. In France, you can rent a radio-controlled lock opener and closer for about $15 at most locks. This is the way to go so you don't have to stop each time and ask a lock keeper to open the gates for you. An easy way to spoil a great trip is to forget to have with you at all times at least 1 liter of water. Bottled water is sold everywhere in Europe. You have a great variety of choices, and you don't want to get caught out in the hot sun without it. Now, after a good day's paddling, where can you stay? Well, you could go the super cheap route and camp. Camping places are far more numerous in Europe than North America, surprisingly, and they are much less expensive, only a few dollars each night. Inexpensive small hotels are available nearly everywhere. I rarely make reservations anymore for rooms when in Europe and simply trust my luck that I'll find something reasonably comfortable and affordable near the water. I usually do. Hotels are arranged by the star system, from 1 star to 5 stars. 1-star hotels are bare-bones hotels, though normally clean. 2-star hotels offer more amenities and are very comfortable usually. 5-star hotels are so fancy that you probably won't be allowed in with a dripping wet kayak bag. On those rare occasions when I cannot find accommodations, I head for the nearest tourist information office and ask for help. They can usually make a phone call or two and make a reservation for you. What about eating? Europe, of course, is famous for its fine food and great restaurants, and those are available everywhere, as are less expensive meals. You can go from the sublime to the ridiculous, or if you want to save a lot of money, do your own shopping. Whitewater kayaking in Europe is every bit as popular there as it is in North America. In fact, most European universities have school kayaking teams. The best time to find whitewater is, of course, in the spring, but sites are available in the summer too. Here are some of the best places to playboat or whitewater kayak. So there you have it. Kayaking in Europe is fun, affordable, and will give you a simply unforgettable experience. Whether you like history, scenery, or just mingling in a cosmopolitan environment, you'll find it all on the rivers and lakes in Europe. I hope to see you there.